Hello everybody, this is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Welcome to today's Critical Thought. While I was tempted to talk more about controller design, especially about why certain controls work better for different genres, I figure I don't want to do a similar topic 2 days in a row. But my prop for today will actually be for that tomorrow, and this is a Super Nintendo controller because we are now entering the 25th anniversary of the Super Nintendo. Again, I feel really old. I'm going to try and zoom in enough if you can see it, but I've actually worn down the start button right there from so many games I've played. I have a almost like one of those storage trunks, like those plastic storage containers filled with Super Nintendo cartridges. So for today's critical thought, I'm going to think about and talk about the Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo obviously was Nintendo's second major console, and I think many people consider it to be one of their best. Of all Nintendo consoles, I think this one that's probably has the most number of high quality games. This was during the time where Nintendo was still pretty much considered king of the hill. While the Sega Genesis did beat Nintendo to the 16-bit punch, Nintendo simply still had the market share and control to get some of the best games released. This is also the time where we really saw third-party developers come into their own. Hopefully that doesn't fall over there. With everything from Final Fantasy, of course Final Fantasy 4 or 6, depending upon where you are in the world, Secret of Mana, Chrono Trigger, Earthbound, and man, I could just spend 10 minutes listing all the Super Nintendo games I've played. I guess for this lesson honoring the Super Nintendo, I'm going to think back, go into my old encyclopedia in my head of some of my favorite Super Nintendo games. Some you most likely know, others probably not. So I guess starting off with one of the more, I guess it wouldn't be considered esoteric at this point, but of course, besides Secret of Mana, they did release the sequel, Secret of Evermore. This is another game from Squaresoft at the time, long before the whole Square Enix thing happened, and it was essentially a pseudo-sequel to the first game, dealing with some very crazy things, including time travel. You have a dog that basically transforms into different creatures or different versions of a dog based on what time period you're in. There's this whole alchemy system in the game that the more you use spells, the more you level up, which unlocks more spells. It had the same radial system that Secret of Mana did, but of course it was much bigger and grander than that. Very underrated game, and one of my favorites was Demon's Crest 2. I think it was called Demon's Crest. I think maybe it just was called Demon's Crest. This was the sequel to Gargoyle's Quest from Nintendo and Game Boy Advance. It was a 2D action platformer, with the twist being that you could return to levels, unlock new upgrades, and it sort of had that Metroidvania feel to it, before that genre was effectively coined. Speaking of Metroid, of course we have to mention Super Metroid, being one of the most fantastic games ever made, and we could dedicate pretty much a critical thought to any game I mention in this video, and Super Metroid definitely is one. This is considered the third game in the Metroid series, and many people consider it to be the one that hasn't been beaten yet in terms of quality. Despite being on the shorter side compared to more of the modern day ones, level design was perfect, that progression model was just there. And again, not much more I can say that anyone else hasn't said already. Now, chances are, even with my list, there's going to be a few that you will most likely think that I've left off. But another one will, of course, be Earthbound. Earthbound holds a special place in my memory. This was the first time I really played an RPG that took place in the modern or contemporary era. It was also one of the first RPGs to feature the strategy guide that came with it instead of an actual manual. And I still have it around here. And if I was wiser, I probably would have brought it up here with me before we started. But I also have, you can't see him up there, but I have my NES amiibo up on my little display shelf there too. Earthbound was a very unique game, and we only saw one in the United States. I At this point, I've heard rumors that they brought Mother 3 over in some capacity, or it may still be in Japan. Mother being the Japanese title for the Earthbound series. Now, let's talk about a little bit more of the weirder games that I remember. One game that I remember in particular was the game Plock. This was done by, I believe, Trade West, who did the Battletoads series. It was a 2D platformer, which it kind of looked like they were trying to establish like a new animated hero or new cartoon character, but it never really took. The main guy was this red, like clay, I think, and he wore like a yellow shirt, and his ability was that he would literally throw his fists off. So think of this as like the precursor to Rayman. I remember what sort of attracted me to that game, or made it stood out, was the map system. Like you basically explore this whole island chain, and so each island had like a different look to it, and you see him like walk along to like each point. And as an interesting twist, if you play the game on like the hard difficulty, there's a section where you go supposedly back in time. So you spend 10 levels like looking like something out of like the 1930s. Everything's in monochrome color. There's like ye old music being played, stuff like that. One interesting game that there's two games that I cannot remember their titles, but I remember playing. One was this top-down or isometric action-adventure game where you're exploring this facility that's been taken over by like this alien or organism or something like that. And the sort of hook of the game, or made it interesting, was it was one of like the first games to really feature cutscenes in the sense of like no audio or no text. You basically watch like the past and see how these people were killed or altered or stuff like that. And I thought that just kind of like really stood out to me for the Super Nintendo era. Another game that I remember that, my god, I can't remember the title either, was a top-down action game where the twist was you had this orb that would bounce around and you had to hit it with your sword to kill enemies with it. So it was like an action game meets a pinball game. And if anyone remembers the titles of those games, please let me know in the comments. Another favorite of mine, oh yeah, The Adventures of Spike McFang. This is another one of those weird, like, third-party games. There are a lot of them trying to copy the Zelda formula. Some of them didn't work, while others just stood out for more of being an oddity more than anything else. And Spike McFang was that. You played a vampire. I don't remember if he was the son of Dracula or not. And basically his kingdom gets taken over. And you go on this quest to basically save the day. The hook of the game, what made it so weird, is one, his main weapon is he literally throws his top hat that he wears at people, and all the spells are basically cards that you pick up. So if you want to use a healing spell, you hold up a tomato card because he doesn't drink blood. He's, this is a PG vampire. Another game I would be remiss not to mention would be ActRaiser, which was one of like the first console games I remember to feature multi-system design. You had these city building elements as you were trying to build a colony or a settlement, and then each settlement had two action stages where you basically come down from like your little sky temple and fight monsters. Another really great game in that vein was Soul Blazer. I think that was it. This was the first game, sort of like the pseudo sequel to Illusion of Gaia, and there was another game that was, I think, only available in Japan. So the idea was you have the settlement, and everyone's been dead or killed. I think the story I think was they were sold like a Faustian deal. So you go into like this dungeon, and as you kill enemies and complete progress, it basically brings these souls back to life, and then the town starts to get formed and grows with new buildings and new people, which unlocks new abilities and so on. Very clever game for the time, and I really want to see more games go with the ARPG and city building design. It's why I love the game Hinterland from Tilted Mill. But if we talk about that now, that's another 20 minutes easily. And I know I like to keep these videos about 10 to 12 minutes tops, so again, I could keep going. But another big one I remember was Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy Kong's Quest. Really amazing platforming, great sound and visual design. Basically, Donkey Kong Country was Rare's, that was not easy to say, first like real big hit. There was supposedly the rumor that Shigeru Miyamoto didn't like the game, but I think that's been refuted. But the second one just improves on it in every way, being one of the most challenging platformers on the console, and even besting Super Mario World in some areas. And if we're talking about Super Mario, I guess the perfect game to wrap up this little look back on Super Nintendo would be Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. This was a Nintendo Squaresoft collaboration that worked in so many ways that we haven't seen Nintendo replicate since. Original characters, challenging RPG combat with button time press to enhance things, Mode 7 graphics, just an amazing game. If you can find it or buy it on the Virtual Console, definitely do that. And I'm running out of time, but I just remember one other game that I'm sure most of you did not play, despite how awesome it was, and that is Metal Combat Falcon's Revenge. I am reaching with this one right now, folks. This was the sequel to a game for the Super Scope 6, which was the Super Nintendo's, I guess, quote-unquote, gun game peripheral, which the Super Nintendo went with a frickin' bazooka. Again, I have it around here. Maybe I'll show it for the next critical thought. So what the game was essentially a shooter mixed with Super Punch-Out at the time. Each stage is a one-on-one with a variety of robots. And what made it so interesting was you could basically deform these robots based on strategy. So if their right arm was like super powerful, had like a cannon on it, if you do enough damage to it, you can actually blow it off, and then they become weaker for the rest of the battle. And the second game expanded things tremendously with a lot more levels, a lot more variety, and even a second mech that changes how you shoot. And what's amazing is that, I know I'm going over time, is that this was all just controlled by the Super Scope, just pointing and shooting. And there was more variety and depth to this game than a lot of other titles at that time, and maybe even some to this day. It's one of those games that if Nintendo was smart, they should really bring back for the Wii U. Because I think that would be perfect. Even if they still made you use the Wiimote, it would still be a great game to see. And I know, even in the last 12 minutes or so, there are so many more games I'm forgetting. But thank you for watching this, I guess, celebration of 25 years of Super Nintendo. Again, so many more games to mention. If there's any ones that you would like to give a shout out to, be sure to leave them in the comments below. But thanks for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow with another critical thought. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a comment and, of course, like and subscribe to the channel. Check out game-wisdom.com, where I examine the art and science of games. Follow me on Twitch and Twitter under GW Bycer for the latest updates of new content. And you can find me on Patreon under Game Wisdom. Donations would be greatly appreciated. They will allow me to keep doing what I'm doing while supporting myself. And when we hit some goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, with the big one being PlayStation 4 coverage and streaming. Thanks again for watching this video, and I will see you all next time.